when you publish a story of this nature, you make a very, very careful assessment of what it is appropriate to publish. And as I say, there are so many sensitivities around this, and you want to put into the public domain as much as you can. But there are limits which, for legal reasons and for sensitivity reasons, you can't share with everyone.
Now, a young person has told the BBC they received threatening messages from the star at the centre of the sexual images scandal. The male presenter remains unnamed, of course. He's been accused of paying £35,000 to a teenager for sexual images. The young person's lawyer refutes this, but their parents stand by their claims. Alex Farber is the Times' media correspondent and can bring us the latest. Morning, Alex.
Morning, Asma.
There's a lot of claims flying around, and it's quite difficult actually to keep them all in our heads. I think that last count there's about 4 of them. What is the newest?
Well, the newest is, as Stig mentioned a few moments ago, the revelations by The Sun last night that the presenter at the heart of the scandal visited an individual during the COVID lockdown back in February. We're told they met on a dating app, exchanged messages, and then met at the person's home in London where they drank tea. That comes on top of an earlier claim earlier in the day made by BBC News, who also have said that they've been contacted by a young person who exchanged messages with the star, which turned sour. This all comes on top of quite a day of developments yesterday. In the morning, Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, he presided over a press conference around the BBC's annual report, in which he noted that perhaps the BBC had some work to do around its red flag processes surrounding issues regarding some of its biggest stars. And that came after we learned that the BBC's corporate investigations unit actually didn't fail to make contact with the claimants, the complaints, the individuals that made the complaint about the star for some 8 weeks. So quite a day of developments, and as you guys have noted, this story does keep on moving.
So, on one hand, there's how the BBC and its corporate complaints unit, investigations unit, whatever, dealt or did not deal with it. Also, there's the police involvement too. Am I right in saying that there's a second police force that was contacted 3 months ago about a BBC presenter, but they decided that there was no criminality, but they're now saying that they're looking into it again?
That's right. There was a initial police force contacted by the original complainant around the time that they went to the BBC. Their inquiries led them to conclude that there was no criminality at hand and no investigation was required. We now have the Met making a similar assessment, and in the meantime, they've asked the BBC to pause its own investigation into the individual while they conduct their inquiries, so they don't get in each other's way effectively. So we've got one police force looked into it, discounted it. A second police force now looking into it, may well discount it again, may well look to proceed. Plus, lurking in the background, we've got the BBC's own investigation, which may or may not be kick-started as a result of the Met's decision.
Alex, thank you very much for that. Alex Farber, he's a Times' media correspondent. Let's also speak to Pia Sarma, who's the Editorial Legal Director of the Times and Deputy General Counsel for News UK. Good morning to you.
Morning, hi.
Now, on the programme yesterday, the Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride said he was worried about his fellow MPs naming the presenter in the Commons. This is obviously due to parliamentary privilege. They could do that and face no libel or defamation action. But people like Jeremy Vine, and I think there's one other person saying that the presenter should come forward now and name themselves. What is a legal situation around the presenter being named?
I think, and I should say that I wasn't privy to the advice to the Sun. I don't advise the Sun, I advise the Times. But there are lots of reasons an editor may not name an individual in these situations. It's a very careful balancing of many factors, including, but not only, the law. But I think what's really compelling here is the confusion that's arisen, and people are asking, what is the law? And this has been going on since the weekend. Tim Davie threw privacy into the mix on Sunday himself. He said the BBC was struggling with privacy laws, and media lawyers were left scratching their head because we're not sure at the moment about the boundaries of privacy law due to a recent line of case law. And we definitely are seeing privacy laws tighten around the naming of individuals who are under investigation. And I think that has caused so much confusion in this case. And actually, the questions that are now being asked and the other presenters coming forward and saying, we think this individual ought to be named, shows that perhaps the privacy laws have gone too far. And actually, the fallout from this is damaging other people.
And kind of linked to that, the presenter presumably could be identified by a process of elimination. Not only by people like Jeremy Vine coming forward initially and saying, well, it's got nothing to do with me, and other male presenters following suit, but also a kind of a process of elimination in terms of people working out who's not on air. Because if this presenter's not on air, they've been suspended. If they're not on air for 2 months, people presumably will notice.
Exactly. And I think that makes a bit of a nonsense of the whole, the fetters on the press and on broadcasters and publishers to name, because I think this example has really shown that people want to know, and arguably people need to know. And it seems as though society as a whole is not sure if it wants to know who stands accused among its own. And with co-presenters saying, look, it's not us. Can someone please stand up and put their hand up? I think it shows that there are many situations in which people who are effectively national figures, very well known, or public figures, ought to be putting their hand up, because it just clarifies the situation. It also makes the narrative clear for society what is going on here in our midst. And I think that can be done without pointing to guilt and saying this person is absolutely guilty. You can say an investigation is continuing without saying somebody's guilty.
Now, a letter was sent to the BBC from the young person at the kind of centre of this, their lawyer, saying that the claims made by the parents, that the mother and stepfather, I think it was, were not right, that they were rubbish. What legal challenges does that bring?
I think there's always a balancing of evidence, and I think that's absolutely in the lap of the BBC to investigate, and that's what they should have been doing to start with. There is a month's gap in their investigation from, I think, around the 6th of June to 6th of July. And with any corporate investigation, you have to call in the individual's question. You have to make contact with those. Positions change, especially where there are such sensitivities as there are here. People have one position and they change it the next time. So it's almost becomes like a police investigation. You have to make inquiries of that. It doesn't necessarily change the legal analysis in terms of whether the presenter is named at all.
And finally, Pia, I know you said at the beginning, and we should of course clarify that you don't, you're not advising the Sun on this, but the Times. To what extent do you think, in your position, does the Sun need to provide evidence to prove that it was the right judgment to publish this article?
I don't think it needs to be pressed to present any more evidence than it has done, because in my view, I think when you publish a story of this nature, you make a very, very careful assessment of what it is appropriate to publish. And as I say, there are so many sensitivities around this, and you want to put into the public domain as much as you can. But there are limits which, for legal reasons and for sensitivity reasons, you can't share with everyone unless there is actually a proper police investigation into these kind of things. And at that point, even then, journalists are entitled to protect their sources and take care about what they share then. So it's a huge amount of trust put in an editor's hands, but I think that's the right way to do it.
Pia, very interesting. Thank you for talking to us. That's Pia Sarma, the Editorial Legal Director of The Times and Deputy General Counsel for News UK.